extremely fortunate to have somebody who is at the forefront of this issue and has brought this to our attention. Terry and I have served on the Energy Committee since I've been elected, and this is something that Terry knows quite a bit about. And that is evidenced by the fact that we are the first state legislature in the nation to be dealing with this issue and even raising this issue of peak oil. Congress has talked about it, I think, one time, and that was 2 years ago, and that was probably when oil was about $50 or $60 a barrel. And here we are today talking about peak oil, which is something that probably many of our constituents are not aware of, and we are flirting with the $100 per barrel for oil. And this is something that we have got to address in our state and our nation quickly. So I'm going to let Terry say a few words about that right now, and then we'll introduce our other caucus members as well, and as they come into the room. Terry.
Okay, thank you. It's apparent if you spend any time studying this issue and trying to talk about it with anyone that the whole nation is asleep. It sits in its complacency, thinking that an endless supply of oil and gas will reach our shores for our cheap consumption. But as you can see by today's oil prices at near $94 a barrel, cheap energy is a thing of the past. This is not something that's really been sprung on us. We knew from some time ago that this was headed this way, but politicians don't want to be the bearers of bad news. This is not a salacious corruption hearing, so we're not going to have a front page on this. But no one will be talking about corruption hearings when they're sitting in lines 4 or 5 years from now, maybe being able to get gasoline. That's how serious I think it is. The real point of this is you have to stick around for the presentations, because there you're going to really learn about what's happening here. Oil, major peak production in oil is happening in many fields around the world, but there are a whole host of things that restrict oil that's going to arrive at our shores. Whether it's 2.5% increased demand around the world, think about that, 10 years, 25% more oil, 25% more, and no one knows where that's coming from. So we're sitting here, and this $94 price has piqued some interest. This has been coming for a while. The U.S. production peaked in 1971, and we've been going down. Mexico is, I believe, peaking as we speak. The U.K. has peaked. Norway has peaked. All the many of the major producing countries have not only peaked, but they've become importers of oil. Oil that used to come here now goes there. So I think we need to look forward to what role and responsibility will this government in Connecticut have to its people when 30 or 40% of their income will be used in energy to heat their homes and get back and forth to work. What kind of economy can we expect? How will we move our workers back and forth to work? Now, if none of this comes to being, hey, I was wrong, and no harm done. But I think we all know that this is a finite resource. I think we all know that the world has changed in the last 20 years dramatically. So I think that we need to aggressively look at this, and I'm very proud of all the representatives who have joined the Peak Oil and Natural Gas Caucus behind me. Representative Carl Leone from Stamford is always out on the front of whether it's water pollution, water issues. You look for Carl on an emerging issue that can be a problem for people, he's there. Jimmy O'Rourke from Cromwell, D from Cromwell, as I recall, is also here. Other people will fill in as time goes. When I put the call out for legislators to join this, a handful of people who are pretty courageous, people who take on tough stuff, stepped forward. No one wants to be the bearer of bad news. No one wants to get out there and bring unhappiness to the people. I think our role here will be to chart a course for the people that will bring them more sustainability, things that will work better. Now, most of us are used to getting screwed, for lack of another term. So anytime something happens that we don't like, we say, we're getting screwed again. But there are fundamentals at work here in terms of how much oil the earth can put out at any time, how much of it will be affordable, how much of it will be rooted to other economies, and what evolving economies like China and India, who are aggressively buying up oil fields as they come online, as they become available, whether it's in Africa or elsewhere, or estranged, our former friends who are now estranged like Venezuela, where the Russians are moving in to take over production in those fields. Our global foreign policy on energy hasn't existed in any intelligent way, and we have absolutely no energy policy in the United States to deal with a contracting supply of energy. So I'm going to move on past this piece of the press conference. I want to just mention the people who are going to join us today quickly and give the presentations. First on my right is Paul Sankowski. Paul is a constituent of mine. He's also on the Mayor of Stratford's Energy and Environment Committee, and Paul's done some interesting work on how it's already affected the pocketbooks of the people in Connecticut, how much more their energy costs, how much more their food costs, and where we're going to go. Charlie Maxwell has been noted for many, many years as one of the top energy analysts in the country with Whedon and Company. Charlie graciously agreed to come up here because this is about economy. It's about investment as much as it is about geology and other things with us. So let me look around the room. Where's Tom Whipple? Tom Whipple over here. Tom Whipple is the editor of Peak Oil Review. He has put many years into understanding this. He's written more columns on peak oil than anybody on the planet, I would imagine, for various newspapers. And he's going to bring a very interesting perspective so we can understand what supply looks like out there. John Kaufman has been gracious enough to come all the way from Oregon to visit us. He works for the Oregon Department of Energy. He worked with some forward-looking communities and cities. The city of Portland, Oregon has put together a peak oil task force to come up with planning. How do we move our workers? How do we move food in? How do we provide medical for them in the extent if we have a contraction? And from a little bit closer, over on the Palisades, Sally Odland from the Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory, who was worked in the oil industry, was a geologist, and is now teaching at Lamont Doherty, is going to give us a discussion about risk management and strategies to deal with the risk of contracting supply. So that's the layout for anybody who could be listening who may want to hear those things. We're going to start in what time you got, Bob? Okay, we're going to start in about 4 or 5 minutes, and the senator is going to pull rank, and he wants to say something else again.
Thank you, Terry. Just real quick, just on some of the facts, as I've seen them over the last few weeks, as Terry has berated me with facts and figures on this, that I think that will hit home to some of our constituents. One is the fact that for every, and correct me if I'm wrong, any of the oil experts, so I'll blame Terry if some of this stuff is wrong, but I think it's right because he always gives me good information, is that for every barrel of oil we're finding right now, we are using 6 barrels of oil. Is it 3? Okay. So for every barrel of oil we're finding, we're using 3 barrels of oil. And that, to me, is something that causes alarm for us. It means that we need to keep continuing our planning stages. The fact that the United States has used our growth in energy is 15% higher than it was back in the year 2000. And the fact that the places where we are finding new oil tend not to be our friends, tend not to be friendly to the United States. So we have all those kinds of things kind of creating this perfect storm where we have to be called to action. And that's why I think why we're here today. And the fact of the matter is that as much as a lot of us talk about trying to make sure that we're being energy efficient, that we're using clean energy, that only goes so far. And so we can continue down that road, and we need to invest in those ways. But we also need to look at the fact that we are using, I think 70% of the oil that we use in this country is for transportation. And we need to kind of get our arms around that and make sure that we understand that and make sure our constituents understand that. Because if we do continue along this path of peak oil and we do not change policies, that will clearly affect the way we get around this country, clearly affect our development, clearly affect our real estate costs, our stock market, and everything else. So that is why we are here today, making sure that we understand and learn about this, and we have time to plan. We don't have a lot of time, but we do have time to plan.
Okay, thanks, Bob. And I think Representative Urban just joined us. She was one of the early prescribers to the peak oil and natural gas caucus, and I believe an economist. Yeah, I think an interesting